Hey everyone, and welcome to Board Game Revolution interview series. Today I have an extremely special guest with me. Now this guy, you may have seen him at the conventions wearing a bright red shirt on, and he's behind the big banner that says Stronghold. That's it, you've guessed it. This is the man that brought us, for the US, Terraforming Mars, Great Western Trails, even survive Escape from Atlantis. This guy has brought it to us. Welcome to Stephen Buonocore. Stephen, how's it going?
It is going so good, Marco. Thank you and Board Game Revolution for having me on. I really appreciate it. But, I'm really kind of angry here.
Why?
Why is it taking you this long to get me on the show?
Well,
it's Tom's fault. It's Tom's fault, right?
That's right. It's all Tom's fault because he's like, we'll get you guys scheduled. And I think last time we just ran out of time.
Nah, it's all good. I'm really, really happy to be here, and you guys do a great job with the Facebook page and all. So I'm happy to be on. Let's do it, man.
Well,
let's make it happen.
Let's talk about you first. For those of you who do not know who Steven is, Mr. Buonocore, let's talk about him. What got you into board games?
Well, I've been a board gamer forever. Literally forever. As a child. Playing games with the family. It was those basic, Monopoly and Trouble and Sorry and that kind of stuff in the beginning, of course. And some weird ones like The Voice of the Mummy, these weird Milton Bradley games. We played everything back in the day. And then, just as you got older, I continued playing various games. I was a huge D&D player. I still wish I was playing D&D, but I moved from New Jersey and I lost my gaming group up there. I'm going to get back there. During the 90s, I got a little bit into Magic, and I got very into Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, which is also known as Jihad, if you remember that. Back then, those are the big collectible card games. I got into regular computer gaming at MMOs, and then late 90s and early 2000s, I was like, really, what the passion was the social aspect of gaming, being around a table, hanging out together, either competing or cooperating with a game in front of us and experiencing that. So I ran full circle back to board games, and it's been, love, of course, throughout and ever since, even more because of board games, versus other games.
There's a term I like to use, especially because that's the same reason why I came back, was I used to be a huge video game player back in the early 2000s, 1990s. And then it's where we became socially insocial. Mm-hmm. Because, we had those MMOs where we could talk to people all around the world. But then you got turned off the TV, and where were you? You were still home alone. So, it's those reasons right there that I know brought a lot of people, back into the board game industry, or at least into the hobby, because they're like, we miss that. And so what game was it that kind of brought you back? Like, that you played, sat it down, you're like, why wasn't this here before?
So during those the early 2000 period I mentioned with board gaming, it was the normal ones that you might think about, like Catan. That was huge, of course, that, the late 90s. And we're, as we moved into the 2000s, people were playing that one. I think the single game that made me say this is a beautiful hobby was a Reiner Knizia game known as Amun-Re. Have you ever played Amun-Re?
I've heard of it, haven't played it yet.
Yeah, it's absolutely great. It's been reprinted by TMG a couple of years back, and that was just the pinnacle of gaming because there's so much interaction. It was all of this. It's like this. You have to bid. Open bidding and trying to outmaneuver each other on the board to bid things, and then you use your resources to build up Egypt. And that was and it was a perfect game, Euro game that played perfectly at 5 players. 5 players. So in fact, that's the sweet spot for the game. You can play from 3 to 5, and 5 is the sweet spot. So that game just solidified I want to just keep eating into this hobby. Puerto Rico was a very big game back then. So you can see this is all right at the beginning of the whole Euro revolution. And Rio Grande Games, Jay Tummelson, he was bringing games over from Germany like crazy and just doing an amazing job of keeping, at that time, the new games flowing. And this is at a time when, there were a handful of games coming out. And now one day during the year we have 1,400 new games coming out, which is astonishing and scary also for the
Right.
industry, which is coming up, right? That's the Essen Game Fair when it all hits. So this is my evolution, and I simply, loved getting there and being there sort of on that beginning portion of those great Euro games coming over.
Yeah, I mean, it was like for us, we had one guy in our group that you could count that he was going to always bring a new game. And
That's cool.
you ever knew what it was. At first it was Catan. And we're like, what is this game?
Yeah.
And then you over absorb in on it because you're just like, there's nothing else like this. And then there was Puerto Rico, and it was like, what? How are these games so much different than what we've played before? Why hasn't the American industry ever caught up? Or Acquire was the other one. Like,
Yeah. Oh, and that was an American game, right? You know that. That's a Sid Saxon game. He's one of the greatest American designers of all time, and he's one of the old school, from that 70s, 80s pantheon of American designers that were coming up. So Acquire was absolutely brilliant, and quite a different game from the Euro games coming over, but still genius. And all of these games they force you to think.
Right.
And I think that's the kind of key thing, right? You play Monopoly, you just buy everything and you hope that something comes up, or you play Trouble or Sorry and the dice are rolling and it works, it doesn't work. With these games that we're talking about, it forced you to think and strategize, tactical decisions, overarching strategy decisions. And that's what made it interesting for many people. And it said, wow, okay, games can be different. You can have a brain and use it and play these games, and it will be a great experience for everybody.
So then came Stronghold for you, which, if I'm reading this correctly, I was going over your bio. You initially started to bring back older games to the public.
Right. That was the original business model. Let's find new games. Let's find games that have been out of print for a while. Find the designer, sign those games. And remember, these are the days before Kickstarter. So how do you get your name known back, in the mid 2000s? Stronghold, by the way, was conceived in 2009, late 2009. We had our first game out in 2010. So how do you get yourself known back then? Well, if you pick a game that people know, that people want and demand, by a great known designer, and people want to take a chance on that, and then your brand will rise to that level when people say, well, I don't know these guys Stronghold, but heck, I really want Survive Escape from Atlantis, or I really want Code 777. So they'll go out, they'll take a chance, and then they see that we could do this, we can make great games, and we did that for a while. But of course, that well runs dry after a while, even though you still find some good games to do some reprints on. Like we did this year, we did Agizia, Shifting Sands. We just kickstarted Democker, which has got unbelievable Board Game Geek history. So, but the premise of the company, going from those reprints to then starting to find some new games by new designers and also known designers, and also then doing partnerships across Europe. And that's been the biggest portion of how Stronghold Games has grown up since then. Lots of partnership games coming from overseas.
So what made you want to do that business model, though, when you first started? Like, what got you like, you know what, we need a resurgence of these games?
Well, it was literally just trying to find a way into the industry, basically, right? So try to find a way for people to say, like, oh, I want that. You want to have some built-in demand. I mean, Rio Grande was doing a great job with but they were truly bringing games over anyway. So they had some built-in demand because people are hearing about them. There were very few of these like, okay, I got this brand new game. Let me just start from the ground up in the U.S. There was very little bit of that. We were trying to figure out a way to make ourselves known. So you know what? We'll go out. We'll find games that people have wanted in the past, Survive and Code 77 and Confusion, and Crude, which was called McMulti out in Europe. We found all these games, and then we brought those games over, trying to get to people to recognize that we were a force to be reckoned with, and that was a major business decision in the beginning.
Well, and now look at you guys. I mean, you guys have changed over. You've brought in a lot of great titles, and acquired quite a few of them. I mean, one of the ones that I think it's like rated #4 of all times is
Yes.
Terraforming Mars.
Yeah.
That's such a game that kind of changes the industry because it changes the mechanics of how basic card drafting works and says, here you go, let's develop something.
Yeah, that's a phenomenon, that game, and it's absolutely astonishing what that game, and it's a transformative thing, really, to have been able to get that game into the catalog. And the history behind that is that we print a lot of our games in Germany, and our German printing partner out there, Ludofact, and they're the biggest printer in the world, really, at this point. They came to us and said, we have this small company in Sweden, and they got this game called Terraforming Mars. They need somebody to do English worldwide for them. I'm like, oh yeah, let me take a look at it. And the guys over at Ludofact were sending me games occasionally, and most of them, okay, we'll do them, maybe we won't do them. But this one, we got it, and we're like, wow, there's a real spark of genius here. But it needed development. So I convinced the guys over at Fricks Games, who are amazing people, bunch of young people. By the way, there's 10 brothers and 6 sisters in this family, and almost every one of them have some, handhold into the company Fricks Games. Not every one of them, but quite a few of them are doing something. And I met them and I said, guys, this game has got a lot going for it. Mars, of course, is a huge, thing in the media, but I think we need some development. Let me bring a friend, a game developer, let him work with you a little bit. So we took the game and we worked on this game between 2015, when they wanted to release it, in 2016 when we finally got it out. The game was released at Gen Con in a limited manner, and then we had it out for the world in end of August 2016, and then at Essen as well, of course. We sold out completely on the first print run, which was a very large print run. We doubled the print run size for the second printing. We sold out again. We doubled it again, and we sold out again. So we couldn't keep this game in print. That's how amazing it was and how transformative it was. And people always ask me, so how do you know that a game is going to be that big? Nobody knows that. But there are certain factors behind it. You mentioned a few really cool things, right? Great mechanics. And, of course, any game has got to be a great game. The card drafting is fantastic. A little bit of area control, definitely heavily resource management. You're managing 6 resources. All these things play together very well. The game's got 3 different modes in it: a very basic mode, an intermediate, and a corporate era, the kind of the advanced mode. All these things worked out really well to bring a gamer into the game. And of course, Mars being a huge topic right now, as well as 3 years ago. It's so in pop culture. It's so in people's minds. I believe, and I'm a little bit older than you, Marco, I believe that during my lifetime, I'm going to see human beings set foot on Mars, which is a huge, huge thing, for the human race. So all of these things together made Terraforming Mars the right game at the right time. And, of course, this is a transformative moment for the company to have a game like that. And it set us up to do other great things, like, as you probably know, the merger with Indie Boards and Cards that was facilitated, by the fact that we came up with this great game. So it was a great time to merge with a similarly sized company.
So how many times has your initial idea and concept changed over the course of your, since 2009 now? Because we're at 10 years later. You guys went from bringing back old and revised games to, hitting the newer game market and bringing in, developers from Europe. To now what was the merger, last year?
That was last year at Gen Con. Mm-hmm.
With, Indie Boards and Cards. So how are you coming up with these changes and then dealing with them?
Yeah, well, the first thing about any war plan is that when you contact the enemy, or you get into battle or into business, you're going to be changing things. It's the first thing that's going to happen. So none of the new stuff I had any clue about in 2009. In fact, I'll go back to a bigger picture at that time. I always thought, because I was in, and maybe you don't know this, maybe your audience doesn't know that, some people probably do. I was in IT. I was an IT guy on Wall Street for my entire career for 35 years. I thought that I'd start this company, Stronghold Games, in 2009. This is after the 2008 market crash. And I was working for that company that almost brought the world economy down, Lehman Brothers. I was working for them. And I said, you know what? I gotta chart my own course. I gotta get out of this. I gotta chart my own course. So 2009, we start the company, and I figured I would kind of retire at some point from IT, working on Wall Street in IT, and use this as a retirement job. So say I was able to, like, I'll retire at, I don't know, 60, and then I'll keep doing this so that I have something to do, and get some income. It won't be a big thing, but it'll be it'll be something I do. Well, it blew up obviously in 2016, and I actually left IT and left Wall Street before Terraforming Mars. Terraforming was about to hit, but I left because I couldn't do both things together, and it was a great moment because everything just went up after that, and you have to be nimble. So then we were running the company. I was running the company with basically 3 employees for a while, until Travis Worthington, a good friend in the industry, approached me early 2018, and he said, Stephen, we've been teasing each other like, I'll buy you, no, you'll buy me. We've been teasing each other about that for a while. And he said, why don't we get serious about this and see what we could do? We opened the books up. So it was a marriage made in heaven of 2 strong companies of a similar size coming together to make a very strong, quite large company now, which it's called Indie Game Studios. That's the parent company, with the brands of Stronghold Games, Indie Boards and Cards, and Action Phase Games, which is a company that Indie Boards and Cards, Travis, acquired about 2 years before the merger of Stronghold Games and Indie Boards and Cards. And we're going to continue to maintain both of those brands, all 3 of those brands going forward. And it enables us to do so many things in the industry, compete on a bigger level with, the biggest of all companies, Asmodee and CMON, slightly bigger than us. We basically have become like the 3rd largest company in the North American market right now. And I think we're going to continue to see other companies following in suit to try to get synergies between them and merge or be acquired. Because when you have a tough industry where there's so much product out there, bringing great brands together will enable people to compete at an even better level. So it's a tough market, but I think that Stronghold Games, Indie Boards and Cards, Indie Game Studios, the parent company, is really positioned well to compete very well in this market.
Yeah, and for me, looking at your growth is just amazing because you go with companies who've been in the industry for a lot longer, and Mayfair Games, Z-Man, have either all closed down or got picked up by the Asmodee, conglomerate. Mm-hmm. And Sure. Then here you guys are just thriving like crazy. What do you think is attributing to that success? Is it because of Kickstarter, or is it just the ever-changing market?
Well, it's not because of Kickstarter, because for the longest time, Stronghold Games was not doing any Kickstarters. We did one before the merger. We're doing some now. Indie Boards and Cards is a Kickstarter company. They did quite a few, and then did some that just went direct to distribution. So why are we been very successful? Listen, there's a lot of ways to look at it, but I think that Travis and I are particularly smart guys. We're good guys. We know the hobby game market. We had niches in and of ourselves. Mine was sort of with the bigger Euro games, though getting into some smaller roll and writes, and maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. And his was the smaller social games. So the marriage was really good, and it brings mind share, and I like to say those words. It brings the mind share of gamers, a focus into a combined company. And I think that's an important thing. I had a certain segment of gamers that were looking at me, and Indie Boards and Cards had a separate segment that were looking at them. And now we're going to kind of combine that mind share to all look at this bigger company, and it's going to work. It's working great. And it's a talent play as well. Indie Boards and Cards brought all the talent. to do Kickstarters, and Kickstarter has become such an important marketing event for the industry. Like you do a Kickstarter, everybody's eyes hit it. So Stronghold has now done several Kickstarters this year. We did Igizia, Shifting Sands. We did Democker. We did Terraforming Mars Turmoil. Huge Kickstarter. So we're going to continue to do them on a as needed basis for our sort of our releases that we want to key on. But the Stronghold Games model will not be solely Kickstarters or not even primarily Kickstarters. We're still going to be bringing up over great games from Europe, which we're going to go directly into the Stronghold Games catalog, and then we bring them out onto the regular market.
So that brings up a good point and segue into what you guys have on the market now. Because when I saw you at Spring, you had, games from Yui Rosenberg, you had games from, just so many. And the roll and writes, actually Yui's Second Chance.
Mm-hmm.
Like I played that probably 2 or 3 times just sitting at your tables because it was just such a fun game to have. So let's talk about the new library and what this merger has brought in for you guys.
Yeah, so really right now what we're trying to push the most, and in fact at Gen Con, right, we're recording this right before Gen Con, and I think this is going to hit somewhere around the 18th. Is that right? On Thursday the 18th? I think you mentioned that it might hit around that time, be about a week before Gen Con starts. What we're doing right now is we've got into some of the smaller games at Stronghold. Excuse me. And that's all because of partnerships in Europe. So as soon as Ganz Schön Clever, was part of the Spiel des Jahres nominations last year, I basically reached out to Schmidt Spiele. I said I would love to get involved with this game. It's brilliant. And not only did we get Ganz Schön Clever, which we called That's Pretty Clever, we then got and by the way, that's by Wolfgang Warsch, who's like the hottest designer in the industry right now. He had 3 nominations the same year in the Spiel des Jahres, and that's never happened before. So we got Ganz Schön Clever, or That's Pretty Clever. We got Twice as Clever. We got Bricks, which is also another one of his. That's 3 roll nights by the same designer. We did Second Chance by Uwe Rosenberg. Simple flip and write game. You flip 2 cards and you're doing some drawings on a piece of paper. And then our premieres at Gen Con are 2 new roll and writes, Dizzle and Encore, which in Germany is called Nochmal. So that'll make a total of 6 roll and writes in the catalog, all in a fairly short period of time, within like a 6-month time frame or so. And roll and writes being as big in the industry as they are right now, we went in heavy. We have the partner, Schmidt Spiele, out there, who's a very big company, by the way. Schmidt Spiele is like the 2nd largest German publisher after Ravensburger. So we had the partnership. We said, bring them all to us. We'll market those games for you. It's the right time to create this kind of line. So because once as a gamer, you get into the idea of a roll and write, you then want to experience the next one. And then you want to try the next one. And then try the next one. And they're all so different from one another. Some are very thinky. Ganz Schön Clever and Twice as Clever. They're hard. I mean, hard at least to really try to score out easy, well. But Second Chance that you played a few times, right? That game is simple, silly. It's so quick. You just simply see an image, you draw it on your sheet. See another image, draw it on your sheet. It's like it goes and goes and goes really quick. So we got the whole spectrum there, and hopefully people, when they buy into this idea of the roll and write, they'll buy the next. And so far, it's been working out very, very well for us.
Yeah, and it seems like with roll and write, and you guys are getting onto the market, like you were there before it actually really exploded what it is now, because it's like now they're so easily consumable that, like you said, you want to get the next one because you can sit down, play it with your friends, 30 minutes, 45 minutes if you're taking too long, and it just goes right on by. So how did you think or figure that this was going to be the next big thing? I mean, when it comes to consuming games.
Yeah, I'd like to say I'm a genius, but I'm not. I'm a student of the industry, and that and if I may plug my own podcast, if you don't mind, Board Games Insider, that we do weekly or bi-weekly. Ignacy Chevicek of Portal Games and myself of Stronghold, we get together and we talk about the industry. So if you're interested in hearing about the industry, go check out Board Games Insider. So in studying the industry, in meeting with partners, and staying in touch, you see that this is the next kind of cool thing. And the funny thing is, people say, oh my God, this is the brand new thing. Guess what? Yahtzee. Yahtzee from like the 1950s was a roll and write. Very different, very primitive, of course. But it's not like roll and writes are not so new that it's never happened. It's just now, it's now more gamerly, and the way that designers are thinking about it has been taken to another level. So I'm a smart guy, I guess, and I know a lot of people. You stay in touch. You're good to people, you're good to designers, and you're good to your partners, and they'll bring stuff to you, and that's how it happened.
Well, I mean, that's just great. And actually, speaking of Ignacy, we were talking to him a few days ago, and you
had him on first, Marco. You're dead to me. I'm not talking to Marco. No,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But I mean, it was because of Predaporter, and
yeah,
they're doing great. And he told us a little story about Stronghold and you. How you guys were doing your podcast, and you're like, I gotta get Stronghold. So and now you have it, and you guys are coming up with Stronghold Undead.
Right, that's right. Now, yeah, Ignacy, this is a great quote by him, and he'll freely admit that he said this. So when he first released Stronghold, the game, back in 2010, you still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I heard a beep. Back in 2010, Ignacy released Stronghold, and I reached out to him at that time. Stronghold Games was a brand new company. I said, hey, I got this company called Stronghold Games. I hear you coming out with Stronghold. I'd love to license the game for North America because I think it'd be a great marketing thing. Stronghold Games going to do Stronghold the game. We'll bring it over. It'll be a great idea. I got literally like a three-word answer from like, no, thank you. It was like he said it was the single worst decision he ever made because he went with another company who's out of business now, and they did not treat his IP well, and it was so he freely admits that bad decision, and he and I are really good friends, and we get obviously not only do I license Stronghold, and at some point we'll do Stronghold Undead, and we now do the podcast together. So he's just a wonderful guy, and his Predaporter, I'm so happy that game came back on Kickstarter and is killing it for him because it's a brilliant game that didn't get the love it should have had back in the day because it was a weird theme, fashion industry. But now people, brilliant ideas, will come to the surface, and it's a great game.
One that we can talk about that's in your category is Kitchen Rush with David Turczi.
Yeah, Kitchen Rush is awesome, and we also did the expansion for it, A Piece of Cake.
Yep.
So we're actually out of stock on Kitchen Rush right now. So we're doing a reprint on that. It's a phenomenal game, and I know that he also has another game coming out right with our Tippy Games, who's a very important partner to us. And that's Dr. MD.
Rush MD.
And you just talked to him about it,
yep.
Right? It was like today, big day, right?
Today we talked to him and had him on for Rush MD,
Great
as
guy.
well as all the other games that he is on.
He's a very prolific. He's a prolific, really nice guy. Kitchen Rush has done very well by us for the short time. It only came out about a year ago, and it's a fantastic real-time cooperative game. Now you gotta buy. That's not something for everybody, and it's a tense game. You really will sweat literally during this game because I call it. It's Hell's Kitchen, the board game, right? You ever watch Chef Ramsay in Hell's Kitchen? I love cooking shows, and I love that show in particular where he's screaming at the chefs, and they've got to do things in a certain amount of time, and that's exactly what you're playing there. If you can't get the dishes, make sure you get the ingredients, cook the thing, serve it out in a certain amount of time, you're going to lose the game cooperatively. So we love it, and excuse me, I have a little tickle in my throat. And A Piece of Cake takes it to another level where you're now doing desserts as well. that'll be back again if people are looking for that game. That'll be back again in about 3 months. Once we get it back in print.
Well, that's another game that he was telling us a story on it, and he's like, no one wanted to pick it up. Like, it was one that he had come up with the concept for, and everybody was like, there's too much chaos. We don't want it. And then Artipus was like, change it to a co-op game, and we'll take it. So how did you guys get involved in it after the change?
Yeah, Artipia Games is one of our strategic partners. So they will pitch almost all of their games to us after they get the game out. They have to run Kickstarters for their games. Once they do that, they will say, "Hey, would you like to join us for a second print run, or even would you like to print with us as we're printing our Kickstarter copies? We can print with you." And so we saw the game and we said, this game's got buzz. This game is just really interesting. So we did it. So we have a number of these strategic partners across the world. And Artipia is one of our longest running ones, actually. So it's really great to have them. It continues that great flow of games from Europe to the U.S. Smaller companies like Artipia, they wouldn't be able to have a channel in the U.S. without companies like Stronghold, and we're proud to give those companies a vehicle in, and of course, it helps us as well. So,
right.
Great companies.
Yeah, and you guys did a great job distributing here in the United States. I mean, it was something that at first, again, was hard to find, but we have our copy. We actually just got the expansion. My friend, actually roommate, backed it, so we're haven't sat down to play yet, but we're excited for it.
Cool.
And now, are you guys going to also be helping with U.S. distribution of Rush MD, or?
Well, at the moment, we haven't spoken to them about that, but we'll see. I can't really. I never comment on a game that has a potential of us being part of, so I can't really comment on it. But if the game does really well, then you can figure it out, right?
Right. All right. So let's talk about, you're going to be at Gen Con in 2 weeks. What's going to be in your library, and what are you excited for?
Yeah, so the Gen Con lineup, we talked about some of it already, right? So the two of the brand new games are Dizzle and Encore, which is called Nockmal in Germany. So both of these are roll and writes. Both of them are $20 MSRPs. Both extend that line to make it a six-game line now of roll and writes in the catalog, and we're very, very happy to be doing that. Encore is the largest selling roll and write in Germany. Yes, it's even larger selling than Ganz Schön Clever. Because it's been out longer, so it has sold extremely well over time, and we picked up the license for that. It's by Inca and Marcus Brand, who have done Village, Spiel des Jahres winners for Village. So it's got great designer cred. And Dizzle is by Ralph Zorlindi. He's another noted designer, not of quite the same fame. So both of those games will be there, and we'll be selling those in quantity there. We're also going to have a game called Amul, which is by our partnership, again, with Lautapellit in Finland. This is a simultaneous card drafting game where you are trying to not only manage a hand of cards, but manage a tableau in front of you. The game's it's gorgeous artwork. When you see this game, the artwork is absolutely amazing. But the coolest thing of all is the game plays from 3 to 8 players. You don't find many really good hobby games that play through that entire scale. So if you want a really interesting game that will play through at a huge scale of people, and by the way, as you play to different sets of people, new cards come into the game. They're not the same cards that were in a 5-player game. The cards that you're going to add in, like for the 6th player, are kind of like brand new cards. And for the 7th player, they're new cards. And for the 8th player, they're new cards. So it almost has that legacy, or what we call like a fable thing, where you're bringing in new cards as you kind of add players, in this case, into the game. So that's Amul, and that's a October release for us, but we flew some copies in just for the show. So we'll have that at Gen Con. Those are our big releases. We're also going to be showing off the other roll and writes, Twice as Clever. We're going to show off Second Chance, which is one of your favorites, I think. We're going to have Bricks there as well. Fine Sand, A bunch of things. It's going to be a great, great, great show. Our party on Thursday night is going to be epic. It is sold out, sadly. I'm sorry about that. It's called, listen to this, it's called the Rock and Roll and Write event. So there's going to be, everyone's going to be playing roll and writes, like all the different roll and writes. There's going to be appearances by famous rock stars or people in costumes as famous rock stars. Maybe there'll be some people singing like as famous rock stars, like maybe me. We'll see. But it's going to be, it's going to be an epic, cool event. And Gen Con in general is just going to be a fun, great event. So if anybody is hearing my voice and is going to be at Gen Con, please come by the Stronghold Games booth. I love meeting new people or old friends as well. Come by, say hello, and just play some of these games with us because we would love to have you hanging out with us.
Well, I unfortunately am not going to see you there, but, for all those who are going to make it out.
You're not going?
No.
Why are you not going?
Because the next one I can make it out to is to BGG Fall.
Awesome.
I'll see you there. Just like we saw each other at Spring. But
right, man.
Make sure to check out their booth. If you already have the invite to the event, go to the event. But the last thing I want to bring up and talk about is your next lineup of games coming up that you can talk about.
The ones I can talk about. I'll mention a few things that we can talk about. So the October releases, I mentioned Mool is an October release. We're also doing Coffee Roaster, which is a reprint of it's a solo game about roasting coffee. It's a really big solo game that has gotten great reviews on Board Geek in its original printing, and now we're doing it with much better art and things like that. We're also doing, of course, as usual, 2 games by Freedom and Freeze with our strategic partner with 2F Spiele, and that's Fire, which is a retro arcade style Space Invaders, but we can't say that word. It's a solo and a cooperative 2-player game. You can play it either way. So we are trying to shoot down the aliens that are coming at you. And we're also doing this game called Fast Sloths. So we all know that sloths are very slow, and you play a sloth in this game. So how do you go fast? Well, the other animals will pick you up and deliver you. So it's not a pick up and deliver, it's a pick me up and deliver me game as you're trying to race around the jungle to get these tasty leaves and be the first player to get all of the leaves. So that brings us into October, and I think that's probably enough for people to digest between now and then. And we'll have more things to announce as we get toward the end of the year.
Well, that's exciting. Well, Steven, thank you so much for spending time with us on Board Game Revolution's live interviews. It was a pleasure. Good luck at Gen Con. I know you guys are going to do a great job.
If I could just
of course
mention the final things, just if you guys want more information about Stronghold Games, of course, come to the website, strongholdgames.com. You can sign up for the newsletter. Don't worry, we don't spam you. You get like 1 newsletter a month. Check us out on Twitter at Stronghold Games, Instagram's at Stronghold Games, Facebook page, very, very, we do a lot there, /Stronghold Games. And as I mentioned before, my podcast with Ignacy Chevicek, it's Board Games Insider. Check us out if you really want more depth of knowledge of what's happening in the industry. We take questions from our guild on Board Game Geek. We love being interactive with the audience. Marco, thank you. Thanks, Tom. Wasn't even here. I thought he'd be here talking to us too. Thank you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. You have an amazing time over at Gen Con, and hopefully I will get to see you again. Well, guys,
absolutely.
That was Stephen Buonocore with Stronghold Games. Make sure to check them out at Gen Con. They will be there the entire time. They have new games ready for you, and they will be play testing them all day. So make sure to check them out. If you like what you see here, make sure to go to Stronghold's website, go to their Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram page, and check out his podcast as well. Him and Ignacy do a great job. It's a great show. What was the name again, Stephen?
Board Games Insider.
Board Games Insider. There we go. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Marco. That was Steven. You guys have a great night.